How's it going, folks? Welcome back to another one of my top 5 videos here on YouTube. Yesterday, we took a look at the top 5 rares in Innistrad the Midnight Hunt that I felt would have the most play through their life cycle in Standard that would be the best use of your wild cards. And today, we're going to take a look at the slightly more expensive Mythic rares that I feel fit a similar mold. So coming in at number 5 on my top 5 Mythic rares in Innistrad the Midnight Hunt, we have the Bloodthirsty Adversary. So this is a card that kind of slots into almost anything red that has instants and sorceries in it. So as a 2/2 with haste, this is a fine aggressive threats in decks that are looking to beat down. And then in the mid to late game, it comes in as a 3/3 with haste or a 4/4 with haste. It flashes back 1/2 spells, generating value. If you're a deck with burn spells, that's aggressive. It can have a little bit of reach attached to it, kicking a play with fire to hit your opponent to the face. If you're a more mid-range deck, we've played some red-black mid-range in the format, this can kick a removal spell to help you impact the board in addition to closing out the game a little bit faster. Coming in at number 4 on my top 5 cards, top 5 mythics from the Midnight Hunt, we have Intrepid Adversaries. So we have a 3/1 for 2 with lifelink, so just pretty reasonable rate creature, all things considered, for anything kind of aggressive. Also a fine card again in a mid-range deck that can buffer your life total against aggro. That also scales into the late game like all these adversaries do. So when it comes to play, you can pay 1 white any number of times, and then everything you control gets bigger for each of the times that you've done this. So just a card that curves fine early on 2 and then also scales as the game goes long. Speaking of things that scale as the game goes long, coming at number 3 on my top mythics from Innistrad the Midnight Hunt, we have the Meathook Massacre. So this is a card that I wasn't quite certain of when I first saw it on paper, but seeing it in practice, it has really impressed me. So the sweeper part of this can be a touch slow in the early game, compared to something like Crippling Fear. It's only -2/-2 on turn 4. But the fact that this hangs out and gives you life as you kill your opponent's stuff is so huge. Generally speaking, a deck like, say, straight blue-black control doesn't have a good way to buffer its life total in the aggressive decks as it stabilizes, and this card does exactly that, rewarding you for exactly what those control decks want to be doing. While this card isn't quite as flexible as a lot of the cards that I've been having on the top 5 lists here, I do think this card is basically just going to be a staple in every control deck, and even out of the sideboard of some mid-range decks from here until it rotates. Just really, really strong effect. Coming in at number 2 on my top 5 mythics from Innistrad the Midnight Hunt, we have the Moonveil Regent, the Experimental Frenzy Dragon. This was a card that I thought looked sweet when it's spoiled, and in practice it's worked out honestly even better than I thought it would in theory. So the 4/4 flyer for 4 is a pretty decent rate, and then you combine this with say multicolored spells. We've played this in blue-red decks, and your Prismari Charm draws 2 and then draws 2, discards 2, gives you so much card selection. Sacred Fire, the red-white, deal 2 with flashback. The fact that this card works with flashback cards also is excellent, kind of lets you leave things in your graveyard to keep the gas flowing when you run out. And then it has that little bit of extra text on it as well, where it gets to poke something for some damage when it dies. And people do need to kill this, because if this stays in play, it's going to create overwhelming card advantage once your hand gets empty and every card you play effectively draws another card. Coming in at number 1 on the top mythics from Innistrad the Midnight Hunt, probably isn't a surprise to anybody that's been playing the format. Renin 7, I think, is definitely the best mythic in the set. Just very powerful planeswalker effect here. Just 5 mana, make a 4/4 or a 5/5 in most situations, depending on if you accelerated into this with a creature, that then, if this sticks around, gets to threaten to do that again, or it continues to generate lands for you, so that 1 token that you did made gets even larger. It puts the extra cards into your graveyard, so this synergizes very well with the various flashback spells that we see running around in the format. And then there's a 0 and a -8 here that theoretically exists, but really Renin 7 is great because you -3, you +1, maybe you -3 again and make another tree folk. You have huge board presence that blocks Goldspan dragons and stabilizes against aggro. Just very, very powerful green planeswalker that will almost assuredly be a format staple in everything green. Not even just mid-range and control. We've even seen the snow green deck top ending this, especially out of the sideboard. So just excellent threat that just does everything you want and so much more. What'd you think of my list here? Were there mythics in the set that you think are more flexible or mainstays in the format long term that I missed here? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you tomorrow on Twitch for some more live content. Thanks for watching, folks.